moving on to open and shut cases, we thought we'd bring something perhaps a little more positive. We'd talk about the power of capitalism, because at the moment, we do have a capitalist in our midst who I think is worthy of all of our appreciation, especially those of us who've tried to dabble in the stock market before, because investing is hard. Sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. Smart and successful investors can generally expect averaged annual returns of around, say, 4%. Big and powerful investors like Goldman Sachs pride themselves on annual returns of up to 10%. Massive entrepreneurs like George Soros or Warren Buffett, they can get as high as 20%. Your bank, by the way, is probably giving you 0.3% max if you're lucky. So just as a scale to judge that on.
It's a big club and you ain't in it.
Yeah. But what if I told you there was someone out there who put the whole field to shame? Someone who made all the experts at Goldman Sachs and their 7-figure salaries look like chumps playing for change. Someone with the investing savvy, the wit, the know-how, the sheer scintillating genius to make a whopping 69% annual return on their portfolio investments. That person exists. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce America's greatest capitalist, Nancy Pelosi.
I wouldn't have guessed that in advance, I have to say.
I must admit I was surprised as well.
69% return on her investments.
Mm-hmm. So
how does she do it?
Now, there are some accountings of this number. It may not be exactly 69%. A large amount of the wealth may be hidden or not readily obvious, and also depending on where you account the gains from, you can manipulate that figure up to 988%.
Oh, wow.
Or down to significantly less.
Right.
But us in America, there is this culture, I believe, of respecting wealth. And I've certainly, in putting this article together, found lots of websites which simply list rich people in America, their bios, and why we should all admire them. So I thought I'd give Nancy Pelosi the same treatment. Well, let's go through her bio. I've gone to Wikipedia because it's basically her campaign poster. She's an American politician. Born 1940, 81 years old, married at 23, 5 kids, 9 grandkids. Classic case of the American nuclear family. So like most Democrats, Nancy appears to be talking the 60s, but walking the 50s. You can have your polyamorous, childless relationship, but Nancy Pelosi has already got her dynasty sorted out.
And dynasty is a great way of describing it. She's literally surrounded by the grandkids. That's good for her.
Exactly. And now, how did she get into politics? Well, she was picked as the designated successor to Philip and Sala Burton in 1988. And since then, she's held one of the safest Democratic districts in the country, California's 12th congressional district. Re-elected 16 times with no significant opposition, winning over 80% of the vote.
The sort of thing that Korean dictators are envious of.
Pretty much, yeah, I'd say so. So technically, she was elected on an all-woman shortlist. The shortlist was one person, and it was her.
Very democratic.
Indeed. And she's been there for decades now. But she rises to prominence a bit more from 2006, 2007, where she becomes Speaker of the House, and she has that position until 2011. From 2019 onwards, she is re-elected as Speaker of the House, and now she holds the various hats of the presiding officer, the administrative head of Congress, the leader of the majority party, and of course this representative of California. So let's have a look at her rap sheet. For those who aren't familiar at all with Nancy Pelosi, some highlights that I've picked out. She led the impeachment of Trump in Congress twice, first in December 2019 and then in January 2021.
Both failures, as I understand it.
Well, I believe they were passed in Congress, but they failed in the Senate.
Yes.
Yes. So he was acquitted. Is the takeaway.
So the impeachment is after the full impeachment is after the acquittal. So he's the most acquitted president of all time.
Indeed, which would sound like an accolade if you spun it that way. She also telephoned General Mark Milley in January of this year to wrest control of America's nuclear arsenal away from the sitting president, Donald Trump.
I recall that. That's very responsible.
And quoting from this article, "This morning I spoke to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, to discuss available precautions for preventing an unstable president from initiating military hostilities or accessing the launch codes and ordering a nuclear strike," Pelosi said in the letter.
Well, that's a total constitutional subversion, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Americans, what do you think about that?
I'm sure you must be thrilled. Yeah.
The situation of this unhinged president could not be more dangerous, and we must do everything that we can to protect the American people from his unbalanced assault on our country and our democracy, she said.
I love that so much because the implication is that Donald Trump's going to nuke California.
Anyway,
moving on.
Another thing which she was noted for was that she banned the use of gender-specific words like he, she, father, or mother in the document laying down her new rules for Congress.
But I bet she doesn't ban them in her own household.
Yeah,
like grandmother.
Her grandkids probably don't call her.
No, that's not gender neutral.
Pelosi.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No. They call her Nan, don't they?
Mm. And another thing she did more recently was she set up the commission to investigate the January the 6th Capitol riots, citing that January the 6th was one of the darkest days in our nation's history.
I mean, I can think of a few darker ones.
Yes, I think so.
Moving on.
Mm-hmm. So let's just have a look at Nancy's net worth over time. So I compiled a number of notes from a number of different sources. So in 2009, she had a minimum estimated net worth of $21.7 million.
As a career politician.
As a career politician on a $200,000 a year salary. Now, if you were to do the maths, that is what? 100 years worth of salary? Is that right?
I mean, she does look like she's been in Congress for 100 years.
That is true. I did choose the most flattering picture I could for this bit, by the way, because there were some very unflattering ones.
But then she's 80 years old.
Indeed.
So. But what I love about this is that in 2009, she's got $21 million worth of money and assets. And she's like, that's not enough.
Yeah.
So is that not enough?
Well, let's see. So by 2010, she had already moved that up to $35.2 million.
So she's nearly doubled it in a year.
Yeah, that's a massive rise. Then moving up to
Bloody
2015, we have an estimate of $100 million.
So she tripled it in 5 years. Well, she really is America's greatest capitalist. Right? This is amazing.
2019, $120 million, sorry. So she's gone up another 20 million, a modest 20% increase.
Modest, yeah.
And in 2021, she's up to 140 million
That's
estimated
incredible.
net worth. And it doesn't stop there, because as far as I can ascertain, that is her own net wealth and doesn't include the net wealth of her husband.
And who knows what his is?
Well, at the moment, from what I can gather, he appears to have about 120 million as well. So combined, they have about $289 million.
Nice work if you can get it.
Indeed.
Blimey.
Now, some of you may be fans of the Pink Floyd song "Money." Well, one of the things you have to do
Nancy
apparently
Pelosi clearly is.
One of the things you have to do if you have a lot of money is buy yourself a football team, and that's exactly what Paul Pelosi did.
Oh, really?
Yep. He literally bought a football team in 2009. He spent $10 million to purchase the Oakland Invaders United Football League team.
Why doesn't he buy a dozen teams at that price? God.
That's a very good point. Probably because he sucked at managing it and they folded 2 years later.
Oh.
They were relocated and renamed, but they went bust in 2012 and he lost $5 million. He wouldn't pay the coach, though. He was still waiting for his money in 2014. Yes, so his business deals have also come under scrutiny. In July 2021, he made a $5.3 million profit on Alphabet shares. This windfall came a week before the House Judiciary Committee voted to push forward with the Ending Platform Monopolies Act.
Really? That's interesting. So the House is going to push for something. Nancy Pelosi's in control of that, and her husband makes a staggering amount of money just the week before.
Yeah, funny that. He has an excuse for this, though. Which
I bet he does.
I find quite amusing. Back in the day when Nancy first went into government and I was in real estate, I never did anything with Resolution Trust. There were tremendous opportunities there to go buy things and make a lot of dough. I never did because I thought if I did and I made dough that there would be something they would obviously criticize her for. So I've religiously steered away from anything that would look controversial to her position.
Bollocks.
Now, the thing I love about this excuse is that it's basically the voice of someone with their hand so deep in the trough that they can make a fortune literally whenever they want with no legal repercussions. And the only reason they don't is to avoid making their spouse look bad.
Unbelievable.
So let's just have a look at now, you might think from this that everyone is on the make in America, but as we know from previous segments, that is not the case. Let's have a look at the broader economy. The US inflation rate is at 6.2%, if we can scroll down a bit. It's highest since the 1990s. That's not good. That's your money, by the way.
Yeah.
Devaluing.
Just bleeding away value because Biden keeps pushing through bills of trillions of dollars.
Yep. In December last year, 22% of all US dollars printed had been printed in 2020. That number may be as high as 40% for 2021, as the money printer has not stopped going brrr. Now, the US government says this inflation is transitory, but you may notice from this new graph of the money supply that it is exactly the same shape as the inflation curve we showed on the previous slide.
No. You've got to understand, right? When they say transitory, they don't mean it will go down. They just mean it will keep going up. So, it won't stay like this. Oh, again, way worse than this.
Perhaps that's right. We can also see that the real cost of living is up significantly in all US cities, according to the Consumer Price Index. And again, that seems to be the same shape as the money supply. Funny that.
I like the fact that this comes from a Twitter account called Nancy Pelosi Portfolio
Well, we're going to get into that a bit later because it is a great account and you should totally follow it. So how does Nancy make these massive gains? And this is where we get into a bit more of a broad discussion about how all the politicians are so rich when their salaries are so small. So I'm bringing up this next article. Nancy Pelosi is facing scrutiny for her husband's timely trading of tech stocks. And this is the same news that we had before. It came a week before the antitrust bill that regulated big tech. So investors make money off the stock market in a number of ways, but the main one is to buy stock at a low price, wait for the price to rise, and then sell the stock. So this is a really sort of basic investment guide. If this is insultingly simple to you, I apologize. I'm trying to include everyone in the discussion to work out why this is so bad.
Yeah, like me, I don't know anything about it.
So the price of a stock responds to changes in market conditions. If there is good news about a company, lots of people want to buy the stock, so the price goes up. If there is bad news, people want to sell the stock, so the price goes down. Changes in regulation have a huge impact on the value of relevant stocks, and dramatic changes in regulation lead to dramatic impacts on value. An investor with prior knowledge about what regulations are coming is able to buy stocks with this foreknowledge and make a massive amount of money when the news goes public and attracts all the other investors. For example, the UK's recent announcement that it wants to ban the sale of all petrol and diesel cars by 2030 is likely to destroy the stock value of automotive companies that aren't well diversified into green technology, just as a punt.
Yes, it is.
While raising the stock of companies that make electric cars. Well, that's one example. Government officials have a wealth of prior knowledge that they can potentially use in order to make huge profits.
Is this is what they would term insider trading?
Well, yes. So that moves on to my next segment.
Oh, sorry.
So if we move to the next one. This is the definition of investor. If we scroll down a little, should be there. Yes, so this is a definition of insider trading. It's using foreknowledge about informational material to stock prices in order to. Sorry, I'll start again. Insider trading is essentially using foreknowledge about information that is material to stock prices in order to manipulate the market for personal profit, and it is illegal if you can prove it. However, until very recently, US politicians were allowed to insider trade with impunity, making immense personal profits from the insider knowledge they had as lawmakers. Now, believe it or not, when the Republic was first coming together, people just thought that, of course, congressmen would have all of this information, and you couldn't stop them trading on the stock market. That would be against their rights and their freedoms as American citizens.
Right.
So they've just been allowed to invest using their insider knowledge all the time, and it's been fine. But it was changed not too long ago, 10 years ago now. The Stop Trading on Congressional Knowledge Act of 2012, or the STOCK Act, proving that American lawmakers are good at one thing, which is acronyms, mandated that congresspersons must declare their business deals within 45 days of having made them. So there's a start, but it does not solve the problem, as we will see. The practical reality is that stock fines are minuscule, about $200.
Really?
If you get caught. Seems to be the average.
Okay, amazing. It's shocking that it even bothered trying to hide it with a fine of $200.
I think what was it, 5.3 million in Alphabet trades is probably about worth it on balance.
But I love the way that they said, well, I don't want to pay that $200.
And it's still very difficult to prove.
Yes.
So who loses out? Well, obviously, stock trading is a zero-sum game. When one investor makes money, someone else is losing money. When politicians make money off the stock market, they're making money off all the other investors, which includes you. And if we go to the next slide. While the GameStop craze of January this year saw millions of dollars wiped off several hedge funds, the usual trend is the reverse. Institutional investors like banks and hedge funds have been accused of running Wall Street like their private casino by Elizabeth Warren and AOC, of all people. And they see consistent successes across the board year on year.
It's very interesting because AOC and Pelosi, she's basically Pelosi's creature at this point. It's obvious that there was in fact an incident the other day where Pelosi just walked over the floor and berated her, and she basically backed down. It's like, oh,
yeah,
okay. So the corrupt capitalist is got a nice hold over the young socialist there.
Well, maybe AOC is going to start taking stock tips from Nancy Pelosi.
Well, yeah.
But it gets slightly more amusing because now private investors are copying insider trades using the power of modern technology. If we go to the next slide. So young investors have a new strategy, watching financial disclosures of sitting members of Congress for stock tips.
Why not?
Among a certain community of individual investors on TikTok, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's stock trading disclosures are a treasure trove. Shouts out to Nancy Pelosi, the stock market's biggest whale, said user CEO Watchlist. Another said, I've come to the conclusion that Nancy Pelosi is a psychic, while adding that she is the queen of investing.
Obviously. I mean, like, if she's dumping a bunch of stock, you may as well dump that as well, because she obviously knows something's going on.
Yeah. Now, this is not financial advice, by the way, but it is hilarious. One way you can take advantage of this is setting up push notifications so that whenever a notoriously successful investor invests in something, you copy them. If we go to the next slide. Whenever so there's down, if we scroll down a bit, this is an
invest in stocks like the great Nancy Pelosi. I love that in this community she's got this legendary reputation as a psychic.
So this is the guy who runs the Nancy Pelosi portfolio tracker, by the way. This is his newsletter. And he explains how it works. Whenever an executive of a company buys or sells stock, it has to be reported within the SEC through a Form 4. Form 4s are public filings, and astute investors can see almost in real time when an insider is buying or selling stock. Right. Tracking these insider trades is one of my favorite ways to make money in the public markets. It's like getting free, deep insider knowledge.
Amazing.
Yeah. And he then went on to, so if we go to his account, which is the next one, go follow this if you're into the US stock market.
Nearly 200,000 followers.
Yeah, it got a cease and desist order in October, apparently.
Really?
It's still going. Yeah.
Why should it cease and desist publishing public information?
Yeah.
That's definitely not about insider trading.
Maybe the exposing government corruption one tweet at a time tagline was rubbed a bit raw. Who knows? And
surely Pelosi can just afford to buy him off.
Yeah. You would think so. I mean, he's a capitalist, right? He'd take that,
exactly. I'm sure. Okay, here's 50 million. Shut up and piss off.
Yep. And then, so that if we go to the last one, he also created, I believe he created, but he certainly references a one-click investment fund on FinMix, which automatically tracks Pelosi's Form 4 filings for you so that you can invest in her trades.
It's a wonderful idea, and I don't see why people don't take advantage.
Yeah, but just to summarize that segment, so we have a sitting member of Congress dramatically inflating their wealth from 21 million to 140 million on a 200,000 annual salary. And I think we've given some insight into how they get away with it.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast Lotus Eaters, you can catch us live 1 p.m. UK time on our website. And if you'd like more from us, you can also subscribe to find some of our premium content.
Yeah, we actually have absolutely loads on there now because we're over a year old at this point. So we've got a massive library of content that you can't find anywhere else, such as our regular series, which are Contemplations and Epochs. Contemplations, we have philosophical and scientific discussions, and in Epochs, we have long, in-depth conversations about things that happen in history. This is one we did recently about the Nika riots, the absolutely brutal Nika riots in Constantinople. I really enjoyed doing myself, but we also have access to, we also have loads of expert articles from people who know what they're talking about, such as this one talking about the misnomer of postmodern neo-Marxism. You may well remember Jordan Peterson getting castigated by left-wing activists for using the phrase. Well, it is a bit of a misnomer, but Thomas happens to be an expert in this subject, and so he takes you through it. And as you can see, there is a silver and gold tier member audio track that goes along with it. So if you don't want to have to read it, you can just listen to it instead. But we also have a bunch of premium podcasts that we can't really host on YouTube because of editorial guidelines, shall we say, such as Harry doing this excellent one, What Happened to the January 6th Rioters, and another one, in fact, that Harry and myself did about a whistleblower from a German public broadcaster talking about the COVID coverage and the particularly engineered narrative in which they can't talk about certain things. And so this leaves a bunch of questions up in the air, and we explore that. Again, editorial guidelines mean we can't really host that elsewhere. We also have a bunch of really excellent interviews. I did one recently with a chap called Philip Tanzer. He's if you're a men's rights activist, you may have heard of him because he comes out of that space, but he's also an ex-gay porn star who's turned conservative activist who has some very interesting opinions.
Very interesting trajectory to take.
Yeah, it's the sort of person you're probably not going to meet in your regular life, but he's a fascinating guy. He's a really nice chap. And also, follow us on alternative media because, of course, we want to break the stranglehold of Silicon Valley over everything that we do. And this means that follow us on platforms like Getter, where you can follow Lotus_com to get all the latest updates from us. And also, we are speaking, or I am speaking, at a conference hosted by Getter at the London O2, the Indigo section of the London O2 on December the 8th. I'll be speaking there it's part of the Counterculture conference, where we're talking about why what is happening to the West is happening and what we can do about it. So part of that is following us on Getter and coming and see us. And of course, subscribe because that keeps everything running.